It's hard to put into words how the world felt when the news of Ozzy Osbourne's death spread. It wasn't just the end of a rock star. It was like a piece of the soul of millions was torn away. For over 50 years, Ozzy had been more than just a voice in music. He was the voice that carried us through our own darkness. In the morning he passed, the world didn't just lose an artist. We lost someone who made us feel less alone in our hardest moments. His death wasn't marked by applause, but by a deafening silence that shattered hearts worldwide. But no one felt this loss more deeply than Sharon. She wasn't just his wife. She was his everything, the one who stood by him in every storm, who witnessed his survival, his battles, his victories, and his pain. Her grief wasn't for the man on stage. It was for the man who once held her hand and promised never to let go. Before we move forward, let's raise a thumb, a simple tribute to the Prince of Darkness. A small gesture to honor Ozzy. In the whirlwind that was Ozzy Osbourne's life. He was a man who bled through every note, every scream. People didn't just hear him, they felt him. He didn't have the classic rock star looks or behavior, but he had something more profound presence. His rise to fame wasn't a path laid out for him, it was a climb, one that tore through him, leaving scars. That made him who he was. From the very start, Ozzy wasn't supposed to be here. Born into poverty in Birmingham, arrested by 17, dismissed by the industry as talentless. His journey wasn't easy. But in every failure, in every setback, he found his voice. And when he did, it wasn't just heard. It was felt in the deepest parts of our souls. That wildness we saw in Ozzy, the unpredictable, chaotic energy, it wasn't just performance, it was survival. That infamous 1982 incident, the bat biting, wasn't theatrics. It was pure Ozzy, impulsive, raw, and right after, he kept singing. He didn't leave the stage, because for him, the stage wasn't just a place to perform, it was a sanctuary. His music wasn't for fans, it was for survival. And that's why, even after spinal surgeries, even when Parkinson's started stealing his mobility, he never stopped. "I owe it to them," he said once, and he meant it. Through decades of addiction, illness, and near-death experiences, Ozzy continued to rise. His solo career wasn't just a second chance, it was a revival. With No More Tears in Ozfest, he became the voice for those who felt broken, a refuge for misfits everywhere. But the more we saw of Ozzy, the more we realized the man behind the madness wasn't some out-of-reach idol. He was just like us, struggling, surviving, and finding a way to keep going. He once said, "I'm not a role model, I'm a warning." But in reality, he was both. He was the monster and the miracle. Even as his body began to fail him, Ozzy kept singing. Music wasn't a performance for him. It was an exorcism. He sang not to entertain, but to survive, to reach out to others who were drowning in their own darkness. The haunting final album, Patient Number 9, wasn't about ambition. It was his way of saying goodbye. Each note, each lyric, was a reflection of a man singing against an ever-approaching silence. His last public appearance in Birmingham was a moment of defiance, a last glimpse of the man who never gave up. He didn't sing, he didn't need to. His presence was enough. At that moment, he didn't need to prove anything. He had already given everything, and Sharon, by his side, understood. It was his way of saying goodbye on his own terms. As he slowly faded, his family remained close. Sharon, Jack, Kelly, and Amy surrounded him with love, sharing letters from fans who had been saved by his music. His final days were a testament to a life lived in defiance of the odds. He never sanitized his past, never tried to erase the mistakes, the regrets, and yet, in the end, he found peace. He had done what he needed to do. The world's grief didn't just come from losing a musician. It came from losing someone who had made us feel heard, seen, understood, someone whose pain had become our comfort. Ozzy Osbourne's legacy isn't just in his music. It's in every person who found the strength to keep going because of him. Even in silence, his voice continues to roar. In every scream of a guitar, in every broken soul who finds solace in his lyrics, in every person who chooses to rise again, Ozzy lives on. His passing left a hole in the world, but it also created an outpouring of love. Fans across the globe mourned, paid tribute, and remembered him not just as a musician, but as a savior to those who needed to be heard. They gathered in Birmingham, at his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame across continents and generations, sharing stories of how his music helped them survive their darkest times. His music, his truth, had become theirs. So, in the end, when we remember Ozzy, it's not the rock star we mourn. It's the man who made us feel less alone, the one who shouted so we could be heard. We don't just mourn his death, we celebrate the survival he gave us. His voice may have fallen silent, but in the hearts of those who loved him, it will never stop screaming. I was 14, standing on the edge of a precipice, ready to fall. Then, out of nowhere, I heard it. "Mama, I'm coming home." It was as if Ozzy's voice reached through the darkness and pulled me back from the edge. I chose to stay. I chose life. It wasn't just his music that saved me, it was his honesty, his raw vulnerability that spoke louder than anything else. And that's the essence of Ozzy Osbourne. Even after his passing, his influence didn't come from polished speeches or formal tributes. It came from the quiet moments of fans screaming his lyrics in their cars, the teenager hearing Paranoid for the first time, the nurse humming changes at the bedside of a patient. Ozzy didn't just write music. He gave us a language for our pain, and in doing so, turned suffering into song. That's what makes his absence so profound. Ozzy wasn't just a name in music history, he was a part of people's lives. He wasn't just a performer, he was a lifeline in the aftermath of his death. Industry leaders rushed to honor him, announcing tribute specials, retrospective exhibits, and memorial concerts. But all the grand gestures, all the public tributes, can't compare to the everyday moments of remembrance. In Birmingham, his hometown, people gathered at murals, lighting black roses and sharing handwritten letters. Around the world, from Tokyo to Los Angeles, vigils were held not just for a rock star, but for a generation that Ozzy had helped shape. He taught us to headbang, yes, but he also taught us how to hold on, to survive. Even in death, his voice still plays loudly, not just through speakers, but through the hearts of millions who found refuge in his noise. But no one's grief is louder than Sharon Osbourne's. For over 4 decades, she wasn't just Ozzy's wife. She was his anchor. She was there in his darkest moments, when the world turned its back on him, when drugs clouded his reality, when his body betrayed him. Sharon wasn't just his partner. She was his fiercest protector, the one who shielded him when he couldn't stand on his own, the one who pushed him back on stage when his body couldn't keep up with his soul. And now, as the world says goodbye, Sharon is carrying the flame forward. Sharon's grief is raw, it's real, but it's also sharp with purpose. She's not just mourning her husband, she's honoring him by protecting his legacy. The memorial concert at Wembley, the Ozzy Osbourne Legacy Foundation. These aren't just plans, they're promises. Promises to continue Ozzy's work in mental health, addiction recovery, and music education. Promises that his battle, his story, his survival will save lives long after he's gone. And Sharon is writing it all down. Her memoir, focusing on Ozzy's final decade, is a testament to their brutal, beautiful, and unapologetically honest love. It will reveal the Ozzy the world never saw, the man who laughed, who cried, who healed, the man who fought his demons and found peace in his music. If I can't sing, I'll scream. If I can't scream, I'll whisper. But I won't leave in silence, he once said. That's the Ozzy Sharon knew, and it's the Ozzy she wants us all to remember. Behind the scenes, she's creating a legacy for him, a legacy of survival, resilience, and honesty. The tribute concert, the memoir, the foundation, they're all part of her mission to ensure that Ozzy's influence lives on, that when people are lost, broken, or fighting their own battles, they remember Ozzy's voice, his story, and they know they're not alone. Because that's what Ozzy Osbourne was. He wasn't just a rock star. He was a man who bled his truth so that others could find their own. His death may have silenced his voice, but his legacy will never fade. Somewhere tonight, someone will pick up a guitar because of Ozzy. Somewhere, a recovering addict will find hope in his story. And in the silence that remains, Sharon will sit, holding that space and turning it into music the world will never forget. Ozzy Osbourne didn't just carve out a place in music, he redefined what it means to exist unapologetically, loudly, and with a kind of raw humanity that will always be remembered. The city that first heard Ozzy Osbourne's defiance echo from pub stages now stands ready to immortalize him. Plans are already underway to erect a permanent public monument in his honor. Local leaders have confirmed early designs for a memorial plaza, and a public square will be renamed Osbourne Yard. One councilman aptly called him the city's most fearless and global voice. But while the city pays tribute, the music world continues to celebrate the man who redefined rock. Across the Atlantic, Wembley Stadium, where Ozzy left his mark with countless musical milestones, is set to host a tribute concert, bringing together rock legends and contemporary stars alike to honor his indelible legacy. The event, still in the planning stages, will unite musicians from all eras, linking the past with the present in one thunderous farewell. Yet, the most profound tribute comes not from industry leaders or grand performances, but from the people. In less than 48 hours after Ozzy's passing, a global petition calling for a posthumous knighthood surged, gathering over 500,000 signatures. While Ozzy was never knighted during his lifetime, his fans believe his contributions to British culture deserve such recognition. The UK's Department for Culture, Media and Sport has already acknowledged Ozzy's role in bringing British music to the world, with the BBC and ITV dedicating specials to his life and career. Meanwhile, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland is preparing a new wing to celebrate Ozzy's career, showcasing rare, unreleased footage, handwritten lyrics, and stage costumes. Scholars are now revisiting Ozzy's impact, launching courses on his life, his music, and the psychological role of heavy metal in post-Androus societies. Ozzy was never just a singer. He was a translator of emotional survival. He turned alienation into art, rage into rhythm, and his music resonated deeply with generations who found solace in his raw, unfiltered voice. For all the accolades and tributes, one thing is clear. Ozzy was more than his controversies, more than his antics, more than the sensational headlines. He was proof that raw humanity, unfiltered, imperfect, and loud, could change the world. His cultural legacy goes beyond platinum records and Grammy Awards. It lives in the language of resistance, in the soundtrack of generations who found their own identity through his voice. Ozzy didn't just belong to music, he belonged to history. And history, unlike charts, never forgets. Even after the world said goodbye to Ozzy Osbourne, his presence continues to echo in every corner of rock history and far beyond. His final bow was not an end, it was a passage into legend, where sound no longer needs speakers to be heard, and legacy no longer needs breath to stay alive. In the days following his death, something profound unfolded, not just grief, but a collective reflection on what it meant to live in the age of Ozzy. He didn't just create music, he created a blueprint for survival, a living embodiment of resilience. Ozzy wore his flaws as armor and his pain as proof. Generations of fans, from teenagers in dimly lit bedrooms to battle-scarred veterans of life, found in him something they couldn't find anywhere else. Permission to be imperfect, loud, broken, and still worthy of love. His legacy isn't only etched into platinum records, but into the hearts of those who survived their own inner chaos, with his voice guiding them through the dark. Bands like Ghost, Slipknot, Avenged Sevenfold, Bring Me the Horizon, and countless others don't just cite Ozzy as an influence. They carry pieces of his rebellion in their DNA. Ozzy wasn't a template. He was a spiritual force, a scarred prophet of the misfit gospel. As one quote that now circulates like scripture says, he didn't just leave behind music, he left behind a philosophy. Be loud, be broken, be fearless, be you. These words are more than an epitaph. They are a rallying cry for the outcasts, the misunderstood, and everyone who ever felt they didn't fit into the mold the world offered them. Ozzy showed us that vulnerability is not weakness, that madness is not failure, and that music is not decoration but a weapon for survival, rebellion, and self-love. And even when his body betrayed him, when the tremors grew and the pain deepened, Ozzy's voice never lost its bite. He once said, "If I die on stage, let it be because I was doing the only thing I've ever truly loved." Though his last performance came months before his final breath, it felt like he died doing exactly that, giving everything to his audience, holding nothing back. In universities now, adding Ozzy's life to pop culture and musicology curricula, he's not just a rock star, he's a case study in authenticity. In therapy groups, his lyrics are quoted by those learning to name their own demons. In households, still playing Paranoid or Mama, I'm Coming Home. His voice is the sound of catharsis and celebration. What makes Ozzy's legacy eternal isn't just his accomplishments, it's that he gave the broken a map to wholeness without ever pretending to be whole himself. He didn't offer perfection, he offered truth. He showed the world how to scream without apology, how to rise without erasing the scars, how to love fiercely despite the darkness inside. In doing so, he transcended genre, era, and identity. Ozzy didn't just build a house of metal, he infused it with soul. Now, that house stands taller than ever, sheltering every voice that trembles but chooses to sing anyway. As long as there are those who choose raw truth over polish, soul over spectacle, and fire over fear, Ozzy Osbourne will never fade. His voice will live in every whisper of rebellion, every chorus of survival, every anthem that refuses to die quietly. And so, the final note isn't to silence its legacy. Eternal, uncompromising, unforgettable. But if Ozzy was the fire, Sharon was the flame. For more than 4 decades, she stood beside him, not in the spotlight, but in the storm. She wasn't just his wife, she was his fiercest protector, the architect of his second act, the voice that carried him when his own began to falter. Through addiction, illness, and chaos, Sharon never left his side in the quiet after his final breath. It is Sharon who now bears the weight of legacy, not with fanfare, but with love, not with myth, but with memory. Every tribute planned, every foundation formed, every story told bears her fingerprints. Ozzy may have been the Prince of Darkness, but Sharon was his light. If this story moved you, share your memory of Ozzy in the comments. Which song got you through your hardest moment? What did he mean to you? Let's keep his spirit loud, broken, fearless together.